morning, everyone. Today is 17th of July, second part of the month already. And it's another Monday and it's another weekly market analysis that we do at Alphachain. My name is Pedro. I'm the senior market analyst at Alphachain. And in today's session, as always, we are going to take a look at what happened last week in the market, the news that affected the market, and starting to look ahead for this week and what they're expecting in terms of the news and the moves, in particular in the FX space, indices, commodities covering gold and the oil market, and then finishing with crypto. And last week, what a week that we had. It was CPI. It was the biggest catalyst of the week. It was last Wednesday on the 12th of July. And it was positive, right? It was below the expectation. We had the normal CPI being at 3% on a year-to-year basis, below the expectation of 3.1 and basically 1% down comparing with the previous month, right? From 4 it went to 3%. And even better than that, and as good as that, we also had the core CPI that it was better than expected. Last month, it was at around 5.3%. The market was expecting to be at around 5%, and it was actually 4.8%. Right? And it felt in the market, the way it reacted to it, it felt kind of as a victory. Of kind of this battle against the inflation. We had the indices jumping to the upside. We had the dollar moving to the downside. We have commodities also moving upwards, and that's basically what we saw. Not just in terms of the moves to the upside or dollar moving to downside. It was also that the price managed to break important levels of structure that you could see both in indices and dollar, for example. Right, so that was a big momentum. We basically had the full week just moving in one direction with a little bit of a correction on Friday. Yes, that was the biggest catalyst in the US. Aside from that, we had core PPI on Thursday, a little bit lower than expected as well, which was good. Unemployment claims, another week with below expectations and numbers back to this range of 230 to 240. So below those 260K that we had for 3 weeks in a row, kind of we're back into this range in here. And then we had all this enthusiasm. As you mentioned, it was actually reflected on the data that came out in terms of the consumer sentiment, right? Way higher than expectation at 72.6%, right? This is basically numbers that goes all the way back to summer in 2021 when there was those checks being given to everyone, and the economy kind of was recovering from COVID. Right, everyone was enthusiastic. The lockdowns were starting to not be in place. People were starting to go out, and everyone was excited around that summer 2 years ago in here. So a big jump comparing with what we were in these last few months. Basically for the last year or so, where we actually bottomed at June 2022. And now in July 2023, we are back at this confidence level of 72.6. Now, is this going to be sustained? Is this going to actually eventually see an improvement? Yes or no? In terms of what the Fed or what the market is expecting for the Fed in terms of the next meeting, again, it's still completely priced in. Another hike of 25 basis points from 5.25 to 5.5%, and most likely this is going to be the last one, the last hike from the Fed. Looking ahead for how the rates are going to be by the end of the year and what the market is pricing in at this point, it's going to be unchanged, right? It's going to go to 5.5 and stay unchanged at least until the end of the year. This was already mentioned quite a few times by the Fed. And this is basically what you're expecting. Now, the big question it will be, will we have kind of 2 hikes or just one? With the data that came out from the CPI, I think one extra hike and that's it. That will be the peak for the Fed, finishing at 5.5%. What else did we had last week, right? So we had New Zealand pausing for the first time as well. Interest rate, it was skyrocket. It was hiking for 12 meetings in a row, and it was the first pause at 5.5%. It's actually the highest interest rate at this point from the major central bankers. And it paused in there, most likely where the Fed also is going to be by next week on the 26th of July during the next meeting, and that's it. And then we also have our head Bank of Canada hiking again after pausing for 3 meetings in a row. Now a second hike, and most likely it's going to pause as well. Of course, still data dependent, but expecting to pause at 5% at this point. And that was mostly it in terms of the big news from last week. We had unemployment in the UK, which was quite negative comparing with the expectation. Also, GDP on a monthly basis slightly better than expected, but still negative at minus 0.1%. And that's actually going to be one of the biggest news for this week. Is going to be the CPI, which is going to be announced on the 19th of July, this Wednesday, which is going to be really interesting to see, right? The market is expecting from 8.7 to 8.2%, and the core CPI to actually stay at the same pace at 7.1%, right? And based on all this information, then most likely is going to influence how the next hike is going to happen during the next BOE meeting, right? It's going to be, the hike is basically priced in. It kind of, the only question is 25 basis points or another 50 basis points like it was during the last meeting. Is expected the rate at this point at 5% to go even 6% at this point, because comparing with the CPI in the UK, even in the US or even in the Eurozone, is quite higher in the UK at this point. And they may need to go higher for longer as well in here, and that's why most likely we are seeing the pound just continue to gain strength against the dollar for the last months or so. And maybe there's no slowdown in this at this point. So yes, for example, if the core CPI by any chance surprises and it's going to be below 7%, so lower than expected, maybe then the next hike is going to be only of 25 basis points. If it is still the same, maybe it still remains at 7.1%, maybe the next hike is going to be another 50 basis points in the next meeting at the Bank of England. We are going to have a CPI also announcement in Canada, which was lower last week, and unemployment then in Australia on Thursday. We already had this morning GDP in China, which was a little bit below the expectation. Market was expecting 7.1%. It was higher than previous quarter, or yes, at 6.3, but it was below the expectation at 7.1. Like basically comparing the last quarter for this quarter, or kind of is in particular Q2, is because last year it was even COVID, right? We were kind of in that lockdown, zero restriction, and therefore kind of expected a little bit higher naturally this year, but below the expectation, and that's a little bit of a concern in there in China. Looking ahead for the indices, right? We started Q2 season, the earnings last Friday. We started with a big institutional firms in the banking sector. We had, for example, one second, JP Morgan Chase, Citigroup, and Wells Fargo. They actually beat the expectations of the Q2 earnings, which was good, strong results in there. However, looking at the financial sector, it actually finished the day on the downside last Friday, right? Which was a little bit strange in that regard. It was the second worst performing sector in the S&P last Friday, even though all these 3 major banks, for example, they announced and they beat the expectations. And it's going to move on this week. We are going to have more earnings. For example, tomorrow we're going to have a few more other banks, Morgan Stanley, for example. Today we're going to have a few of the minor banks. which is still a concern, like the situation with the Q1, and that remains still a little bit of a concern. And even with these major banks, a little bit the connection or exposure to real estate, the commercial real estate, that's a little bit of a concern as well. Moving on, then on Wednesday we have Tesla, Netflix, IBM, and even ACML as well. So again, it's starting to be into different sectors as well. Let's see how well everything is going and if it beats expectations or not. And the week after that, that's where the big tech also is going to be announcing their earnings, right? So paying attention to that for sure, that's going to have a clear impact on the performance of S&P, NASDAQ, and the US indices, right? And for example, I remember last quarter, sometimes what happened was maybe some kind of a move during the London session, and then when you had the earnings, or be careful when the earnings are after the closing or close to the closing, then you can have a lot of volatility and big moves at around maybe 7 or 8 p.m. UK time in the indices. All right, looking ahead and looking at the charts, in this case, dollar index, as always, we start with the dollar index. It just crossed the 100 mark last week, right? So as you mentioned, the big bearish momentum that we had, we also managed to break these key lows into creating new lows for the year in 2023 and just carry on the momentum to the downside that started back September last year. My question mark now is until where is the dollar going to? Where is going to be the next key level of support? It's going to hold this dollar index in here, and where it's going to stop. Like looking at the bigger picture, and if you do like to analyze with Fibonacci, we are getting really close to this golden number, 61.8% in here, which is around 99.08%, 99.083 in here, which is actually a zone that I have in there marked. Can be correct, can be a little bit of a retracement in there. Typical move, maybe. Of course, attention to this previous level of support that can work as resistance now. If you are looking for that continuation on the dollar, it's something to keep an eye on. Otherwise, yes, we may go a little bit into that level that I just mentioned, or then we can continue eventually a little bit even further down on the dollar, starting to aim towards that zone in here. That's kind of where it paused a little bit and created this move to downside. So maybe that can be one of the destinations in here, or actually the structure that was created after it broke above this level, which is somewhere in here below all these lows that we have in there. So yeah, something to keep an eye on. Again, for example, we had 6 negative bearish days, daily candles, but that's not often that we actually see something like that. If you even compare with the previous, basically full couple of years, we don't really have that often so many negative days. We actually had the opposite and around the same level of structure when actually price was going to the upside. Last year, we actually had 6 bullish candles. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Just similar to what we had right now, 6 bearish candles. And it was around the same level, around the moment also that we broke this $100 mark in here on dollar index, which is quite interesting to actually see that happening. Yes, continuation on the dollar. Maybe if you continue to look for bearish momentum, maybe the retest towards this level can eventually happen in here. Moving along and starting with the US indices, right? So we moved to the upside with the CPI and we managed to break all this structuring here and how these highs. We kept respecting this trend line in here, and we are getting closer a little bit towards to these highs in here back from March last year, right? So that's kind of the question: what and until where actually this S&P and then eventually NASDAQ it's going to maybe again typical move could be even the retest of this level in here. And then continuation to the upside, or some kind of move between this level, also retesting this trend line, right? That may be a good opportunity even for today's session, for example. That's more intraday, like bigger picture. If you're actually waiting for any kind of big reversal, we don't need to rush into it. Like we don't, if by any chance you are looking for any sell opportunity in here, you don't need to start aiming already for something like this. price is going to take a little bit of time until even thinks about making that kind of a move. Most likely, we are going to start noticing those lows being broken even before price eventually does the final turn. As long as the lows continue to be respected, we continue within this bullish momentum on the indices, and there's no need to force any big sales. Intraday, yes, there's opportunities maybe to look for sales, and then maybe wait for some kind of good level where you maybe can again jump into the continuation to the upside. Zones maybe somewhere in here, and then you can even target above this high, which can actually happen, and price actually can even go above all this structure in here of 4,648. Price can actually start going a little bit closer towards that level. Meanwhile, yes, there's maybe something in here that can be interesting. Looking ahead for Nasdaq, again, we finally managed to break those highs in there. We already had broken the highs slightly a little bit, respecting still the trend line. Again, lows are not being taken, and you start to get closer to these highs in here, which were the beginning of 2022, actually end of 2021. That's actually when you had the all-time high there on Nasdaq. Now we are reacting from this left shoulder, and somewhere in here can be a good level to expect something, and then we may have a little bit of a zone a little bit above that price can also go to. So again, similar scenario. Let's try to see how price can react a little bit from these levels. Lower time frame, actually already managed to break this low, which starts maybe opening a little bit more room to downside. Again, as zone to look for eventually for a potential target for a sell, and then maybe continuation to the upside. It can be somewhere in here or under test of this trend line as well. Just something to keep an eye on. Intraday, again, there's maybe plenty of opportunities. Let's see how this Q2 earnings going to affect the indices in the US, to see if we are going to have any kind of reversal. For example, if the expectations and the enthusiasm with the AI stocks actually is sustained, or there was a little bit of fake momentum, maybe not so much strength in those assets and stocks, and maybe there's going to be a correction in the market in here. That's kind of one of the questions most likely for next week, when you have those big tech being announcing their earnings. Again, this is a little bit of what we have on Nasdaq. Potential continuation if price retraces. Intraday, there's maybe some opportunities to look for sales, and maybe a little bit in there as well can be quite interesting to look for. Right, you did manage to break a little bit these lows, so this is already something that you want to start paying attention. Right, breaking lows on the way up, that's exactly what to try to find out. Dow Jones, similar. All right, we managed to slightly even break that high. Again, we are still respecting the high a little bit more on the left, so you are still within that range. And this was one of the zones last week that you paid attention to after you created that move to the upside. It was if this level would hold or not. As long as it holds, maybe continue to look for bullish momentum. If it breaks, then you may aim towards a little bit more to these lows once again, right? So that's a little bit of the range that you are looking at this point in here. Then you have DAX, quite interesting, right? We kind of turned bearish last week, or whenever we broke this important low. Then question mark, it will be what kind of retracement you would have maybe before the continuation. At this point, you are having this deep retracement. Again, we have this trend line, which is maybe about to be broken. We have this important structure in here. If you do manage to break below that, maybe then we can start aiming again towards these lows. Price at this point respecting this double top in here, right? We had this highs and now creating a double top in there, and maybe that's going to hold, and price will just continue to move to the downside. So those are usually the indices we look at. Looking ahead for the euro index in here, so we had the correction to the upside on the euro after a really negative move on, or bearish move on the dollar. We had the opposite on the euro, price moving to the upside. We respected this edge in here that you're looking for, so there's not exactly an engulf there to the downside. Nevertheless, let's see how price may react from here or from there, or even above in the bigger picture. As we mentioned, this high didn't really react from the extreme in there, so there's even the chance to create or to break this high, even to get a little bit closer to this level in here. Nevertheless, lower time frame, this level in here can still be interesting to look for some kind of reaction, and then the zone a little bit above there. In terms of continuation to the upside, maybe if price by any chance retests a little bit this level, can be a continuation in there, or as long as it doesn't break this low, maybe it can continue to move higher. The break of this low may open space for price to go even a little bit more to the downside. Right, that's something to keep an eye on. And then the yen index, these are the ones that we have been looking at, and they have been providing good opportunities. Like we had initially, as we mentioned 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, and we were looking for this move to the upside on the yen. And then we started to look for some potential retracement, right? Price looked like overextended again, quite several days, creating bullish momentum. Eventually we would have that correction, which started to happen last Thursday, and then on Friday again. Price reacted all the way from this previous level of resistance, now becoming support. And let's see if we are going to resume the move to the upside, or are we going to find again more resistance zone in here, and price eventually is going to push to the downside. This was a good zone. This was a target that you're looking for to fill out this compression. Price did that and reacted exactly from that good level in there. So let's see if we are going to break above this level, yes or no, and you're going to continue this momentum to the upside. Right, this is something to keep an eye on. Then on the individual yen pairs, right? So, and this actually, it was one of the most interesting parts where it goes into correlation, right? Because if you're actually looking for a correction on the yen pairs during last week, there also may be opportunities to look for long on yen pairs while this yen index was moving down, right? And we talk about maybe euro yen, pound yen, even Aussie yen or dollar yen. Like, and if by any chance you try to look for those long opportunities on dollar yen, it may have not been the best option, because actually dollar index, it was still quite negative, right? So dollar yen didn't manage to make as a big of move to the upside as the other ones. Actually, the other one started to move Wednesday or Thursday to the upside, and dollar yen only moved on Friday, which is exactly when finally dollar index finally made a little bit of this move. That's actually when dollar yen moved as well, right? And this is where to see the correlation and how important it is to actually pick and select the assets that you want to trade when you are finding these opportunities in these indices, then to pick and select correctly the ones to try to take advantage of the move that you are looking at. So this is the index. Again, maybe there's a chance to continue to the upside. Bigger picture, you may even start targeting even that high somewhere in there. Nevertheless, this is still kind of an important zone in here, and price may actually even do something like that before maybe aiming to go much higher. Right? You have a little bit of destruction here, which can be important. Looking now for the individual currency pairs, like starting with the euro, like again, it's just similar to the dollar index, really strong momentum. On Friday, it was a little bit more of a range in there. Price didn't really create momentum, and price now is actually about to close the gap, a gap that was created last year just around the weekend that it started the war in the Ukraine. Back in on the 25th of February, that's basically when the war started in Ukraine, between Russia and Ukraine last year. Then you had the weekend, price opened on the 28th on Monday, and we had a little bit of a correction, but price never really closed the gap, which may be a target for these longs, at least maybe expecting for price to close this gap, if not even going a little bit higher. Price at this point, this morning already went above this high, and let's see if it doesn't really want to go there to finally close that gap before making any correction to the downside. Like again with the CPI, really strong momentum to the upside, and since then price has been moving quite strongly. Eventually we are going to have that kind of a correction that price may retest this previous level of structure, or in particular in here, before a continuation to the upside. Right? So if you are looking for any kind of sell opportunities, maybe eventually when you do cross that, now pay attention to these lows. When you do cross that, we may have that as a target, and maybe as a continuation also to the upside. Yes. Now where from? I'm still aiming even a little bit above that high that we are looking at in there. Pound dollar, a little bit similar, actually quite a little bit more bearish than the euro this morning, but quite bullish as well, really strong momentum. And we finally reached that target that we're looking for, which was kind of the retest of the structure. And you start even going a little bit higher than that at this point, reacting from here. And that's maybe even the potential to go even a little bit higher towards 1.32. So let's see how strong this pound dollar is going to continue to be. They have been quite bullish, strong momentum, which we can also see as we saw with a negative move on the dollar index. Again, where to? We'll see, right? Again, big data is going to come out on Wednesday with the CPI in the UK, which is going to be interesting to see if we're going to continue this momentum or not. Again, eventually, maybe one of the ranges could be even retesting back to this level, or at least the 130, 1.3 can be quite interesting. Then maybe as a continuation. So any maybe shorts opportunities, maybe targeting this level for today or tomorrow can be an interesting level, and eventually can even target that high if you continue to go higher. Yes, looking and moving on to the Aussie dollar. At this point, price made all this correction as well, really strong momentum, and now we respected this double top. Apparently, price decided to respect this level, and we are a little bit in this range at this point. So we'll see what the Aussie is going to do. Personally, could see it going a little bit higher. In there, it was a good zone where price actually reacted from these lows, and I would like to I could see eventually Aussie going a little bit higher, even potentially going above that level. But for now, maybe going a little bit in here for some kind of correction. But for that to happen, price needs to break those highs. It respected them. So we'll see now what's going to happen. If you kind of start breaking again below this level, you may have a correction, and actually you may aim again back to this level in here. If you by any chance start respecting this level, which is kind of a previous level, an important level of support resistance, we may start having the correction and going higher again. If you do go higher again, then you may break to the upside in there. Euro Aussie, also kind of correction in here, really strong move, and then we move on to the yen pairs. Like, and this is what we had and what I mentioned in here. Dollar yen has been quite negative, and the only time that it actually make a good move to the upside, it was on Friday, and you compare with the other ones that they actually moved already on Thursday, even Wednesday with the CPI. Again, in order for this dollar yen to even attempt to have a good correction to the upside, it needs the help of the dollar index. Like, we need dollar index also to make some kind of a move in here. Otherwise, it's just going to continue to move to the downside. You can see again, just similar. We had these 6 bearish candles in a row. Now we had a little bit of a move to the upside on Friday, and apparently it's already resuming the move to the downside in here. So let's see what's the destination here on dollar yen. Are you going to try to aim to go towards that level before continue to the downside, and where will be the target to the downside in here on dollar yen? Right now, it's time to wait and see. Again, the sell opportunity that we looked for a couple of weeks ago, it happened, and it happened quite quickly and aggressive. This part I was not really expecting like that, but it just happened, and that's how the market moves. Now it's just wait and see. We managed to break a little bit above that level, which is a good zone. So trying to see how price actually is going to react from these lows. But yes, we started to have at least some highs being broken on the way down, and that's kind of one of the first triggers that you want to find out, because before that, basically price was just quite negative, quite bearish in here without really making or breaking any highs. And yeah, we've even broken now this trend line in here. So yes, maybe there's opportunity in here to look for some correction, but again, the dollar needs to help for that to happen. We have euro yen, and as an example, like euro yen actually starting to move to the upside on Wednesday, and then Friday make the second move up in here, which is a much better move to the upside comparing with the dollar yen. Just an example, and we may be now in between this direction, like this highs and this low. So is it going to go all the way there? It's going to correct and start breaking lows. This is kind of the new range that you'll be trading in here. So it's going to be the new opportunity. We're looking for that correction last week that happened, and now it's time to wait and see what's going to happen next in here on the euro yen. Quite similar as well. Pound yen as well. It already actually made a little bit more of a correction and moved to the downside. Again, similar Wednesday, Thursday, moved to the upside in there as well, and may even continue to move down. But again, this is the range that we have at this point in here. So let's see what may happen in there. Also, Aussie yen, strong correction to the upside, and then kind of already correction, and maybe it resume to move to the downside as well. So that's kind of what we are looking at. Good opportunities. Let's see how price is going to react from there, and there is even a potential sell again from this zone in there. Then you had dollar CAD, which was a really strong momentum to the upside. After taking this low, we had a correction on dollar CAD. Again, there's maybe even a more space for price to move to downside, but overall, it reacts from a good level of support resistance in there. So let's see. But however, yes, I could see price maybe going a little bit lower, but it was such a strong move that if price by any chance reacts from this level, there's maybe an opportunity to look for another one, especially if you do break above this size. Breaking above this size and then kind of correcting here, maybe there's another one to look for, and you may start targeting this range in here. That's maybe something to keep an eye on. Looking even at the other CAD pairs, we are at this high key zone on pound CAD, for example. We're testing this level from February 2022 from last year, which is a really important level in there, just to see also the strength on the pound in this most recent months. And so let's see, are we going to break above this high? Yes or no, or what kind of a move we are going to have in here, but just to see also the strength in here on pound CAD, which is quite interesting. And then dollar franc Swiss has been just literally moving to downside. It finally managed to break this low back from November 2020, the low basic from COVID, around the period of no, this was already way after COVID in 2021 in there. It was actually a normal target. We actually mentioned that a few months ago. Any sell opportunity from here, the target will be this low in here and even below that, because it had already taken taken that low in there. So let's see now what's going to be the destination here, right? We're starting to react a little bit from this zone in there. We had a little bit of correction in there on Friday, but because of this big move that happened, right? If you were involved in the markets back in 2015, this is when the euro franc Swiss kind of decided to detach. It was at 1.2, kind of, it was that agreement, and all of a sudden surprised everyone, and we had this massive sell-off in just a couple of minutes or seconds in this case, and which makes it hard now to even predict what may happen in there, to look for opportunities in here. So at this point, dollar franc Swiss, a little bit of a cautious, maybe want to continue to look for more sales in there. Again, maybe whenever dollar index is about to turn to the upside, maybe you can try to find something in here, or then just wait for some kind of retest to a good level and try to aim more for a bearish move in there. Then you have gold. Gold had a really strong move during the CPI also to the upside, and it reached one of the targets that we're looking at, right? So we had this target in here, created from this size all the way till there. When you start breaking this compression and this trend line, we start aiming then for price to get towards that level. Price has been stalling in here for the last 2-3 trading sessions. So let's see if it's going to manage to break above it. And if we do manage to break above that, then we can maybe even go all the way, maybe to test this 1980 or 78, something like that can happen if you do manage to break above this level. I think at least in here, we can easily go there, 1972, but then you can even start aiming to go a little bit higher, if not even filling completely all this compression until here. And maybe after that, we take that level and we may start having another move to the downside from from here. So it's something to keep an eye on. Gold, again, price can even go down a little bit to test this level. It was the where the CPI happened, and it created that big momentum, and then maybe can have this kind of a move as well to the upside. Like just a few zones on gold to keep an eye on. And then you have oil, right? There was already a big move this morning, big spike to the upside and now correction. But you could see last week it was a big momentum as well, just to kind of the celebration of the market of the good CPI data that came out until last Friday. You started to have a correction and starting to have a move in here to the downside. Like you retested the $77 mark. We finally moved away from this range that we were for the last few months. And let's see now what's going to happen. I could see oil going maybe a little bit more to the downside, even maybe retesting this $72 in there before we continue. But interesting, this strong spike today already this morning in here. Quite interesting, the kind of a move that we had happening already in there. So yes, maybe more momentum to the downside until we may reach this new zone in here on oil. And then looking ahead and finishing with the crypto, right? So we had another big spike happening last Thursday on Bitcoin, managing to break the most recent highs. However, it still hasn't really broken that level of structure that we have from summer last year, right? So again, as long as that level still keeps holding, the moment or kind of the bullish sign is still not going to be given for myself in terms of the engulf to the upside. So as long as it holds, it kind of still respects it in terms of potential bearish move in here. Now, as always, anytime we have a spike, at least the most for the last recent weeks, we then have a correction straight away to the downside. That's basically the pattern that we have seen from these recent spikes. Like it was another one, move to the upside, fake out the highs, and then a correction, and then we have another big move down, just like we have for the last times. Again, we may target this low, which is already a break below that zone, and we may look for price to get into this level. There's maybe more sell opportunities if price by any chance retests to this level, and then maybe price can continue or can go first down, then up and do something like this, which could be quite interesting as well. So that's a little bit of what we have on Bitcoin. It's still within the same range, even though it looks like it's about to go higher, but it fails completely and then just moves to downside. I'm looking for price to eventually break below this low, and then let's see how it's going to react from this level. If you do break below this level, then you can start looking for price to go even below that zone. Something interesting that I mentioned from last week as well, and looking at the global trading market, crypto total market, is that I was waiting last week, if you remember, a couple of weeks ago, that I wanted to see actually this crypto total market to actually react from here before any important move to downside, then on BTC and so on. And finally, last week we finally had this big momentum and price faking out all these highs and reacting from there. So that has happened at this point, and our question mark is going to be exactly this. So like, is this level going to hold price and price will just continue to move to the upside, or this level is going to eventually be broken to the downside and maybe start aiming for price to go lower and maybe retest this level, which would take Bitcoin to the downside as well, most likely Ethereum and so on. Like, so this is something that we are looking at. It's this important key zone in here. Something that I would like to see, to be honest, it will be actually price respecting now this level as it is now, going down, breaking some lows, and then kind of retest again, coming back in here, coming to this level that is still fresh. Now I'm at basically with this level, and now could carry on to the downside after that, filling this. This will be a typical move that it happens more often than not, and it will be an interesting opportunity to look for setups in here, right? Breaking first is low, leaving this level fresh for the future, for then price to go there, fake out this highs, and then drop. That will be something interesting to look at in here, which could be quite similar setup on Bitcoin, the same way that maybe we could make new lows from here and then maybe retest to that level that we're looking at and before a continuation to the downside. Looking for Ethereum as well. We fake out these highs. There was even a little bit more of room to the upside on Ethereum that we could look for. We retested this high in here, this left shoulder. It's kind of a little bit of what we reacted from there. Again, similar scenario. In all of them, we have this important level of structure that's going to be important to see if price holds it and price starts aiming to the upside, or if price breaks it and maybe start aiming to move more to the downside from here, right? So it's going to be interesting to see what price will do around this level where this big move to the upside happened in there. Even Solana, I think we kind of mentioned last week as well. So we're looking ahead as well for price to fake out all these highs and react a little bit more from this structure, which is the most important, which is the key zone for me, at least. In terms of if we break above this high, now we maybe then go all the way and to get closer to this maybe $60 zone or 61. As long as we kind of hold this level, maybe price can start moving to downside. And it's going to be a similar scenario. Let's see how price is going to react around this level. If it holds, maybe price can go moving to the upside. If it starts breaking, maybe can start going towards these lows again, if not even that zone. So that's just something to keep an eye on in terms of the key levels to look at that price needs to break or respect in order to then have a bias of what to expect next based on all this situation. Again, it's important to be one step ahead of the market, and this is how exactly you can do that. With that being said, guys, again, thank you so much for taking the time. Feel free to ask, to comment below. Again, focus on this week. What are you expecting from the dollar? Continuation to the downside, or are you going to have some kind of correction? And how is price going to react from that previous level of support that can maybe work as resistance now and continuation? The indices with the Q2 earnings season, which is in here at this point, are we going to have a continuation to the upside or starting to shift a little bit for a downside momentum? And then commodities as well, something to look at. Oil, gold, is going to continue to go up, or some correction in there as well. Like, and even crypto and Bitcoin, which side are we going to break from this range that we are in? Like, price is in the interesting levels. It looks like it's losing momentum in some of the assets, which can lead a little bit for a correction, maybe until the remaining until the end of the summer, and then we'll see by September where we are going to be. Thank you so much, guys, for taking the time. I'll see you next week. Thank you very much. Bye bye. Wishing everyone a great trading week.